Alright, these are our notes for section 4.3 on congruent triangles. Now, this is a pretty easy section. We're going to go over some definitions first, and then we've got 3 examples. One thing to remember out of this section is that order is extremely important, and I'll show you why in the examples, but order is extremely important today, so really pay attention to that. Okay, first thing we're going to do is talk about congruent triangles. Now, if you have congruent triangles, that means the triangles have the exact same shape and size. They are identical to each other. Now, they may have a different orientation. One may be flipped upside down, or one may be backwards, but they are the same shape and the same size. Okay? Let me make a note that it might have a different orientation, and that confuses people. That just means that like I said, it may be flipped, it may be turned, it may be rotated. It just may look a little different, but they are exactly the same. The angles are the same and the sides are the same. Okay, that's the next thing. Your 3 angles are identical in both triangles, and your 3 sides are identical in both triangles. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is a congruent statement, and it compares 2 triangles. And it's something like triangle ABC, where you name the first triangle, is congruent to triangle XYZ. Okay? And this is where order is extremely important. The congruent parts match up in your congruent statement. So if we look at this congruent statement I just wrote, that means angle A and angle X, they're congruent because they're in the same spot in our congruent statement. They're both first. Okay? Angle B and angle Y, they are congruent. Okay? So the pieces that we could pull out of there are exactly the same from triangle to triangle, and that's where order is really important. In your examples, we're going to be naming things. So it's really important that you get the order exactly the same from one triangle to the other because they have to match up exactly. They have to be named the same way. Okay, this last idea says corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And we abbreviate that CPCTC. This will become more important in a later example, but for today, what I want you to know is that if 2 triangles are congruent, and I'm abbreviating this, remember that's our symbol for congruent, then their parts in the same places, which is corresponding, okay, are also congruent. Okay? And that's what I was explaining with that congruent statement. That if we have 2 triangles that are congruent, then the 2 angles that are in the same places, the same spots in our congruent statement, angle X and angle A, they'd have to be congruent to each other. They would be the same measure because they're in the same spots in the congruent statement. Okay? So what we're going to do in these examples is I'm going to give you a picture or a congruent statement, and you have to tell me the part from one triangle to the other, the pieces of the triangles, where what they're congruent to. And again, order is important. Extremely important, okay? And we're going to do this first example together, and then I'm going to let you try the second one on your own. Alright, it says we've got a congruent statement. Triangle DEF is congruent to triangle GHI. And then we have 6 parts of the triangle over here that we're going to say what they're congruent to. First one, DF. So we're going from D up the triangle to F, which means we need to be in the other triangle, the same spot. We're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to go up that slanted side. So it would be congruent to GI. And that's how we solve these, okay? They have to follow the same order. Let's look at the next one. HG. We go from H out to G. We started on the inside, so we're going to go from E out to D, okay? Now, I'm going to give you a shortcut. You can use the picture. The picture's fine. Just make sure that you're going in the same directions. And like I said, they may have a different orientation, so you might need to think about it a little bit. The quicker way, the shortcut, is to use the congruent statement up here. Okay, we rewrite it. Triangle DEF is congruent to triangle GHI. Now, all of these pieces are corresponding to what they're congruent with, because that's how our congruent statement is set up, that the angles match with the angles in the other triangles. So if we're going to do this third one, angle E is in the middle. That means it's got to match up with angle H, which is in the middle of the other triangle. This is the easier way to do it. You can tell everything you need to know from the congruent statement. Angle I, well, I is last. The last one over here is F, so it matches up with angle F. The third one, the third angle, we have IGH. Well, we went it went last, that's where the I is, to the first, to the middle, in naming it, okay? Last, first, middle, IGH. So over here, in the other triangle, we're going to do the same thing. The last letter was F, first letter was D, and then the middle letter is E, so it would be angle FDE. Hopefully you're getting a sense of this, and that order is really important. They have to match up. They have to correspond. Last one, HI, goes from the middle to the last letter. So in our other triangle, our first triangle, we're going to start with the middle letter, which is E, to the last letter, which is F. And that's what I want you to do. That's what you're going to be doing on your homework in class, okay? Whatever's in the same places, you need to match them up. I'm going to let you do example 2 on your own. Notice example 2 doesn't have a picture. It only has the congruent statement. So you should be able to just pull out the letters that are in the same spots and match them up. I want you to do the six parts on your own, and then pause it, come back, do those problems, and then check your answer. Alright, now that you've paused it, let's go over the answers. AB is congruent to, well, let's go over our congruent statement first. We have triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. So AB, first letter, middle letter, first letter of the second, middle letter of the second, so it should be XY. The next one, ZY, that's the last letter and the middle letter of our second triangle, so we start with the last letter, middle letter. CB. Angle Y is in the middle, so it's going to be angle B. Angle A is first. The first letter in the other triangle is X, so angle X. Angle XYZ, that goes first, middle, last, so angle ABC. And then CA goes from the last to the first, so it would be ZX. Hopefully you got all those right. If you didn't, see if you can find your mistakes. You may go back and watch the first part again where we talked about putting them in the correct order. Otherwise, let's go ahead and do example 3. Our third example, notice it does not have a congruent statement. It has a picture. But in the picture, we have some angles with measures in them. What that's going to do is it's going to help us write our own congruent statement. And we're going to do exactly what the congruent statement has for us when they give it to us. We're going to match up the things that are congruent. And we're going to start with this first triangle here. Okay, I'm going to write my congruent statement down here at the bottom. Triangle, let's start with 80, which is J. Go to 25, and then down the other side. Okay, so 80 to 25 to the angle that doesn't have a measure. So JLK. Now you could have done it a little differently. You could have started at the 25. You could have started at the open angle. Remember back to 4.1, we said there's 6 different names for one triangle. So you could have any of those 6 names. The trick, though, is to match it up to the second triangle with the exact same parts. So I started with J, and J was the angle 80, which corresponds with angle V. So when I write the second one, V and J, they are the same measure. They have to go together. And then I went to the 25. So I'm going to go down on the second one to W, which is where the 25 is located, and then up to the x. Now, you may have written a different congruent statement. If you want to write one on your own, just make sure that you've matched up the parts that are the same. Okay, now that we have a congruent statement, we don't need the picture anymore. We can just use our congruent statement and identify everything else that the problem asks. Well, it asks for VW. According to my congruent statement, that's first and second in the second triangle. So I want JL. That's the first and the second in my first triangle. Next one is LK. Now notice that that's an L. These are our angle signs, and that's the letter. Okay? So we have L to K. That's the second to last. And then we're going to go in the other triangle, W to X. That would be second to last. X corresponds with K. Now I can tell that one from the picture. X is the angle that doesn't have anything, so is K. Okay? So that one you could use the picture for if you wanted to. Same thing with J. J is the angle that's 80 degrees. Well, that's angle V. So if you want to use the picture, you can. It's really up to whatever you're more comfortable with. Okay? So kind of figure out which one you think you're going to use. Most of the examples, I'd say half the examples on your homework are going to have a congruent statement already written. So if you just want to use the congruent statement, that's fine. The rest of them will have a picture with them or just a picture, and you'll have to write your own. Let's finish this out. Triangle JKL. Well, that was first, last, middle. So for my second triangle would be VXW. And then for the last one, triangle XWV. That's going from last, middle, first. So it would be triangle KLJ. Now, what I'll be checking on your homework is for the order, okay? So you really have to pay attention to that. I can't stress it enough that the order is what's important here. Not that you can name them, not that you can identify them. You're going to have to write a congruent statement, write it in order, and then make sure that the order is the same for all of these parts. And that's where people usually mess it up. Usually it's an all or nothing type thing. You get one question, you'll get them all right, or you'll miss them all because you'll have the order wrong. So really, really focus on the order. I can't stress that enough. Those are your notes for section 4.3. If you have any questions, be sure to bring them to class or watch the video a second time. Make sure you clear anything up. And again, if you have any questions, be sure to bring them to class.